your film Room is a fascinating situation about a woman who's been imprisoned in a dungeon-like setting with her kid. What research did you do for that? And when you did, what surprised you?
Well, I had done most of it for the original novel. And the funny thing was, a lot of my research sources, I was just trying to get information from them. So I looked up things like, video interviews with, say, Elizabeth Smart. And then I got fascinated by the form itself. I mean, the horror of these interviews, how incredibly nosy and intrusive they were. So things that I was going to just to get information on the lives of those who've been kidnapped, I actually got fascinated by the media around them, message boards about Elizabeth Fritzl in which total strangers would be saying, she's my hero, the putting people on pedestals and then knocking them down. So I got very interested in the kind of, meta aspects of it. And then when we were doing the film, we did a bit more. We found a few sort of extra details, but it was mostly a matter of researching as many different situations that had anything in common with this 5-year-old growing up in a locked room. So mostly we didn't look at kidnappings, we looked at situations like refugees.
Do you remember how Alice wasn't always in Wonderland?
She fell down, 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 deep in a hole.
Right, well, I wasn't always in Room. I'm like Alice. I was a little girl named Joy.
Nah.
And I lived in a house with my mom and my dad. You would call them Grandma and Grandpa.
What house?
A house. It was in the world.
I've learned the most just from going through, from writing the script based on my novel, right through to seeing it getting made. And individual scenes where all the dialogue fell away, and I realized that's still my scene. And I wouldn't have known that starting out. I would have thought the scene is really the words they speak. I was all about the dialogue at first, and I now realize that in almost a homeopathic way, they can take away all the dialogue and it's still the scene. And I even began enjoying when the actors improvised, whereas I was really tense about the notion of them improvising before. I remember in the writing process about draft 3, Lenny said, "Oh, that's a family meal, they can improvise." And I'm like, no, I'll write them great lines. Let me write them great lines, And then on the day, they were doing lots of improvising, and I at that point trusted them. I trusted they had their characters, and I liked what they came up with. And because we were working with a child, it seemed to make sense to improvise a bit, because when you want that completely naturalistic, bouncing on the bed, fun with mum stuff, you have to let them improvise.
I didn't read the book, actually, sadly. Now I've seen the movie, which I loved. But that transition, like midpoint through the movie, I had no idea. I thought they were in the room the whole time. And it's when they...
And you were prepared to stay.
I was. I was feeling it, though. I was like, oh boy. But when did that concern you at all, that transition?
Well, you see, in fiction, you can do anything, right? There's no rules at all. Fiction is wonderfully baggy.
Yeah.
So the book is in 2 halves, and I knew that would make an odd-shaped film, but I had a feeling it would work somehow.
What's the separation in the book? You actually
half and half.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The film, they escape maybe a little bit, including the escape scene that gets you to halfway through.
Right.
The book was super. I mean, the movie was also very disturbing, of course, but the book, there were more details, there was more, and I was really wondering how you would handle that. Did you just have a sense of sort of what would be kind of palatable for people to see in a movie theater, where you would see? Do you know what I'm asking?
We tried not to worry about that stuff too much. We were aware that breastfeeding is a particularly disturbing thing to show on
That's Stop the Hills of Eyes.
Cannibalism.
Something so unnatural.
Cannibalism would be fine. Breastfeeding is really
How
touchy.
dare you?
But also, we were being careful with our child star too.
Sure.
The thing he was touchiest about too. So I would say some young men watch the entire film and don't notice the breastfeeding. Even though there are about 4 moments when you see it, but you see it in a kind of a hitch up the t-shirt way, and they just don't see.
Yeah.
But no, most of the time we tried not to worry. I remember I had such a dream experience working with Lenny Abrahamson, our director. There was no, faceless executives telling me what to do. It was just one-to-one with Lenny around a kitchen table, But I remember him saying to me, look, we could get a mainstream audience for this film, but only if we make it without compromise. We can't pander to them or we won't get them. So I just... I try and spend as little time as possible thinking about whether I'm any good. I try not to have a sort of distinctive Donoghue style. Typically, people will have read 4 of my books before they realise they're all by the same person. I just try and serve the story, So if it needs to be contemporary and funny, great. If it needs to be, in sort of fairy tale language, great. It's not me. It's not me. So of course it is just as egotistical as any other kind of writing.
Are you Elena Ferrante?
I wish. But I just try and think of it as, what does this project need? What style, what techniques, what historical period, what vocabulary does this need? So that keeps all the pressure off me.